The political wheels are beginning to turn in Duluth tonight as the state DFL Convention prepares for the process of nominating candidates for the top state offices. Tonight, WCCO television begins extended coverage of the events live from the Duluth Arena. Skip Loescher is in Duluth now for the first of special reports. Let's take a look at that little old schedule. Do we have a convention up there or not, Skip?
Looks a little barren here right now, doesn't it, David? But tomorrow, more than 2,300 delegates and alternates will be jamming this auditorium for what will probably be a real aberration by DFL standards, at least in recent memory, a kid glove convention. It will be fairly normal for the various factions at a DFL convention to shed the boxing gloves, throw away the Marquess of Queensberry rules, and simply go at it in a bare-knuckled street fight. But party officials hope this convention will be something else, a picture of harmony, they hope. In fact, they say more importantly, they need an image of unity coming out of here. First full-scale event of this convention was a social event at the Depot, an establishment about 2.5 blocks up the hill from this convention center. Karen Boros is standing by there live, as she has been most of the night. Karen, can the DFL pull that image off? Can it be peace and harmony and unity?
They are hoping that they can. In years past, Skip, reporters didn't even bother asking DFLers about the prospects for unity. It was a silly question. They came to their conventions more concerned with things, with issues than about the appearances of unity. You have to think back to 1978 when they fought about everything from how to propel your canoe through the BWCA to who would represent them in the Senate to remember that. This year they are hoping the convention will be a peaceful contrast to that 78 convention and to independent Republicans. Independent Republicans have 5 candidates for endorsement for governor, and the promise that whoever wins that contest, if indeed someone does, will have a challenger in a party primary.
Over issues, we're going to be a feisty bunch as usual, but overall, the real thrust of this is the fact that the Democratic Party wants to represent mainstream Minnesota.
One test of party unity could be a visit from former Governor Rudy Perpich, who is bypassing the endorsement process and who today said he would like to address the convention. Letting him speak could anger Spanish supporters who feel that speaking here gives Perpich more credibility. Denying him the podium could give Perpich a campaign issue. He could claim he must run outside the party system because the party turned its back on him. But if Perpich shows, Hatch says he will be allowed to speak. The Attorney General's race is the acknowledged hot contest, but the race for Lieutenant Governor is also giving delegates something to talk about. Duluth DFLer Arlene Latho is challenging Spanish's choice for a running mate, but neither she nor Carl Johnson see the contest of proof that there is a lack of unity.
When you have a too well-organized, prepared slate in advance, why should the delegates be there? Why should people be involved? And what is to encourage them to remain involved?
I think we're used to fighting. I think we're used to not necessarily fighting, but providing a forum for different ideas and discussions about those ideas. And any contest can be healthy, and I think this will.
Feminists in the DFL are disappointed that Spanish named Carl Johnson, a man, as his running mate. Perpich this afternoon told reporters that the top 4 people on his list for the lieutenant governor's job are all women. And running down some of the names I've heard: Joan Groh, Emily Ann Staples, Janet Clark, Peggy Byrne, and Nancy Olcon. I asked Joan Groh this evening. She said she was aware that Perpich wanted her on the ticket, but she let him know that she would not run against an endorsed candidate. Emily Ann Staples, former state senator from Plymouth, reportedly has told Perpich no. The same is true with Janet Clark. I have been told Janet Clark is a member of the House from South Minneapolis. I have been told that Janet Clark has been asked and did tell Perpich no. Peggy Byrne, a St. Paul DFLer, reportedly has not been asked, or last I heard she had not been asked by Perpich, but has said that if she is asked, she would also say no. Nancy Olcon is running for Attorney General. She has a statewide organization and has campaigned statewide, which would make her a strong candidate. I asked Nancy this afternoon if Rudy Perpich had asked her to be on his ticket. She told me that she has not seen or heard from Rudy Perpich in the last 4 years. Back to you, Skip.
Thank you, Karen. It should be interesting to see what Rudy Perpich says to this convention. I would think he could come out to something a winner as long as he does not attack Warren Spanish. Certainly he can take some of the spotlight away from Spanish on Saturday. Spanish is guaranteed to be this DFL's endorsed gubernatorial candidate. But the only real contest here this weekend is the battle to see who wins the Attorney General's endorsement. The convention's endorsing committee has been meeting tonight trying to decide who to give that nod to. Alan Cox has been attending it. He's back here on the convention floor. Alan, what's happened?
Skip, it's hardly been a session of high drama, but it does suggest a line from Shakespeare. What's in a name? To some of the candidates for the Attorney General endorsement, the name's the thing.
Forward all three.
Well, we're having a problem with the videotape, but the excerpts included comments from Skip Humphrey, the state senator, Hubert Humphrey III, saying that he believes that his name carries the clout that would help the entire DFL ticket, I should say. Tom Berg, the former U.S. attorney, says that he believes his name carries a lot of weight with DFL supporters. And Nancy Alcon, the Hennepin County Commissioner, says she believes that experience in local government is the most important consideration for the Attorney General's office. The committee took 8 votes tonight. They fell 1 vote short of making a decision on who to forward to the convention floor. So just a few moments ago, the committee of endorsements decided to forward all 3 names to the floor of the convention. That's just a suggestion, of course. The convention will make its decision on Saturday morning. Skip.
Alan, one quick question. With basically no endorsement coming out of that committee tonight, isn't it generally conceded that's really a plus for Humphrey?
It is considered that. The Berg people were very much hoping that they could pull some sort of a recommendation out of that committee, but they still say they had the majority of the votes, 8-6 over Humphrey, and they say that should carry some weight here on the convention floor Saturday.
Okay, Alan, thank you. We'll find out. Most notable difference on tap here tomorrow is an arena, of course, full of delegates and alternates, and the task facing the more than 2,300 who will be gathered here, endorsing a U.S. Senate candidate. That should be fairly easy for him. Mark Dayton, almost guaranteed to get the nod. He will also speak to the convention tomorrow, and then these delegates will adjourn for the state convention dinner, and they'll hear from former Vice President Walter Mondale. We'll be covering all that for you tomorrow, beginning with the noon report. David?
Skip, for just a moment, is Spanis likely to get any flack from the floor on not having chosen a woman as his running partner?
I think there's at least a reasonable chance, David, that some of the feminists may try to embarrass Spanis on Saturday. They probably won't succeed to any great extent, but they may try.
Has Ms. Leto indicated that she might be a disruptive force up there?
Possibility. Could happen.
All right. Thank you. A reminder again, I'll have live reports from the convention team on the 5, 6, and 10 reports tomorrow, and then a wrap-up special report at 10:30 tomorrow night. Mike?
Good afternoon and welcome to the Friday edition of the Noon Report. Minnesota DFL political jockeying may reach its peak today as delegates to the state convention in Duluth choose which of the statewide hopefuls will win endorsement by the party.
And Bill will begin our extended coverage of the events today by going live to Duluth, and a report led off by Skip Loescher. Skip?
Thanks, Debbie. Good afternoon to you. Drums sounded the official start of the 1982 DFL State Convention in Duluth. Those drums part of the opening flag ceremony as the Dakota Ojibwe Band played to a standing convention. More than 2,300 delegates and alternates gathered here in Duluth, and the first of the many speeches they will hear came in a welcoming address from 8th District Congressman James Oberstar, who, among other things, blasted the Reagan economic program. But of more note this noon is the floor activity on the convention floor on behalf of the 3 Attorney General candidates. While the endorsement vote won't actually be taken until sometime tomorrow, this is the day those candidates have to try to twist enough arms, change enough votes, or for that matter, convince the uncommitted delegates so that one of them can come up with the 60% that they really need to gain endorsement. Get more on that subject now from the convention floor and Alan Cox. Alan?
Skip, the arm twisting has been going on in the hallway outside the arena floor here, in the hallways of the hotels where the delegates are staying, and in a few minutes, possibly in a rules fight here on the convention floor. There was something of a preliminary vote in the Attorney General's race last night before the endorsement committee. Before the vote, State Senator Skip Humphrey told the committee he believes he is the most electable of the contenders for Attorney General, an allusion to the drawing power of the Humphrey name. But former federal prosecutor Tom Berg said his is the name that will carry weight with the voters. Berg said he has already lined up personal endorsements from hundreds of DFL leaders and influential lawyers in Minnesota. Local government service was the selling point used by Hennepin County Commissioner Nancy Alcon. As the convention opened this morning, the candidates turned from the committee to the delegates entering the arena. The Berg and Humphrey camps both claim to have about 50% of the delegates committed, and they say that they should be able to get enough uncommitted delegates to reach the 60% level needed for endorsement tomorrow. The Alcon camp says they believe that their candidate will gain if the balloting goes to many ballots, especially among feminists who are disaffected over the fact that Warren Spanis has chosen a man as his running mate for lieutenant governor. In a few minutes, there is likely to be a debate here over a proposal that would require, after 3 ballots on an endorsement contest, that any candidate with less than 10% of the delegates' votes would have to drop out of the race. That, of course, would be a disadvantage to Alcon. Her supporters believe that her strength would come many ballots further down the road. So we could have an early test in the Attorney General's race, and we could very well have an early test of some of the feelings of some of the feminist factions here in the DFL.
Okay, Alan, thank you very much. In just a couple of hours, this convention will be making its first endorsement. There's absolutely no question that 35-year-old Mark Dayton will be crowned as the DFL's candidate for the U.S. Senate, and by a very big margin. That does not necessarily mean, however, that this convention is really all that enthusiastic about Mark Dayton. We'll get more on that from the convention floor, and Karen Boros. Karen?
Skip, Mark Dayton, who spent the last 18 months and $1.99 million leading to this day. With me now is candidate Mark Dayton. I guess, you know, people are saying the endorsement is all but assured. What's your feeling? You've worked hard, you've spent a lot of money, you've done a lot of traveling. Was it worth it?
Oh, it was certainly worth it. I've worked very hard for the last year and a half, but it's also been the best experience of my life to travel throughout our state, to meet with thousands of wonderful people. I've learned a lot, and now I'm looking forward to the 5 months which lie ahead.
How do you translate the endorsement here? This is a small group you've had to campaign on. How do you translate that? How do you generate excitement against David Durnberger in November?
Well, there's going to be a lot of excitement in Minnesota politics this year because we have a lot at stake for the future of Minnesota in the issues that we're talking about, with record high real interest rates, with Minnesota homeowners paying record high property taxes. We've seen both a cut in services and higher taxes for most Minnesotans. We'll be campaigning on the traditional commitments of our DFL party to senior citizens, to farmers, to working people, and to teachers and students, and I think we can run a good, strong, exciting campaign in 1982.
Some of the delegates are telling me that, you know, if Mark Dayton wants to spend his money on this, let him. It's going to be a difficult battle against Durnberger. And they're saying, you know, just let him run. How do you whip those people into some sort of enthusiastic state to campaign for you in November?
Well, I've been very encouraged, Karen, by the strong base of support I've been able to build within the party. I think I'm going to receive our party's endorsement this afternoon, and I think that DFLers are united in their desire to present to the people of Minnesota a strong party, and a party which talks about the concerns of the people of our state. And I think we'll have no problem generating the excitement and the enthusiasm within our DFL party to try our best to win in November.
Okay, thank you very much. Back to you, Skip.
Thanks, Karen. We have to wrap things up now, but former Governor Rudy Perpich is in Duluth at this point. In fact, he should have arrived about 35 minutes ago. He'll be holding a hospitality suite at the Normandy Hotel, trying to see some delegates, convince them that this convention really should hold off on endorsement and go after him in the primary. That's not going to happen. Warren Spanis will have an endorsement out of this convention, but it's interesting that Perpich is here. He's asked to address the convention, and he will probably get that right sometime tomorrow. Debbie?
Thank you, Skip, and the rest of the crew for those excellent reports. We'll look forward to more of those on our later newscasts.
We mentioned this convention now has its first endorsed candidate and its first spark of real excitement. It was the U.S. Senate endorsement which provided these delegates with a chance to unleash some of their pent-up energies. And from the look of the convention floor, you might assume that Mark Dayton was the unanimous choice of the delegates. He wasn't. Pro-lifers tried to embarrass Dayton by nominating Jim Cramer. But it was this man, 35-year-old Mark Dayton, who came to the podium with a fire and brimstone speech.
Minnesota, we do agree that farmers, teachers, working men and women, students, senior citizens are hurting now in our state more than ever before, and that they need a new vision, a new hope, a new set of principles that will guide our state, our nation, and our world in the months and years ahead.
Just about 12 minutes ago, they stepped to the podium to announce the vote totals. Kramer, 250, just the hardcore pro-life support. Mark Dayton, an overwhelming 947 votes. That's 77 to 78%. To say that's substantial would be putting it mildly. But despite that visual and very vocal support for Mark Dayton, many of the delegates here are asking, who is this guy who will represent the party in the U.S. Senate race? Karen Boros has been following that campaign endorsement today. She's down on the convention floor now. Karen?
Skip, 18 months ago, DFLers regarded Republican Senator David Durenberger as all but unbeatable. There was certainly no rush of candidates anxious to challenge Durenberger, and there was a fair amount of scoffing when Mark Dayton, an acknowledged rich kid, stepped forward and entered the race. For Dayton, it will be an uphill race all the way to November.
Anyone who suggests that someone could buy the DFL endorsement is really insulting the integrity of the DFL delegates.
Mark Dayton has spent 18 months and nearly $2 million of his own money in a quest for the U.S. Senate. DFLers in Duluth talk about his improving ability as a public speaker, his increasing ease at meeting strangers. Some worry about the lack of excitement generated by Dayton, saying if he wants to spend his money, let him. At the same time, the same delegates say they will work for Dayton, that they like his liberal stand on most issues. They are impressed with his dedication. They say if he's willing to spend as much time and money, he must want the job. It is not the first time Mark has bypassed the traditional pastimes of the wealthy.
Ever since I was a public school teacher in a ghetto in New York City and lived with a welfare family in a public housing project, worked in the South End of Boston as a street worker and a social worker, I have had that commitment. And I believe I can demonstrate to Minnesotans that I'm not going to Washington to try to represent my interests and the interests of my family. In fact, I intend to vote against my own economic interests.
His wife, Elida, says the race is the most important thing her husband has done with his life, that she has learned a lot in the last 18 months.
Mark has taught me what it is to really, really care about something and to really work hard for it. And it's one of the things that I respect most in him is his ability to put himself out and give 100%.
Elida Dayton told me that one of the things that has surprised her most is the intensity of personal feelings involved in politics. Back to you, Skip.
She is a nice lady, Karen. Thank you very much. Well, we did learn this afternoon that former Minnesota Governor Rudy Perpich has received tentative approval to address this convention. Perpich, of course, is going to have to do battle with his former counterpart, Warren Spanis, in the primary this fall. Alan Cox has been following that convention story. Let's go down to the floor and Alan. Alan?
Skip, that tentative speaking engagement is the closest thing to a controversy that reporters could find this afternoon. Rudy Perpich says he isn't in Duluth to contest Warren Spanis's march to the endorsement from this convention. But Rudy Perpich is in Duluth, and this afternoon he fired a mild salvo in Spanis's direction. Perpich says Spanis has not committed himself on what Perpich considers the most vital issue of the moment in Minnesota, the issue of economic relief for the Iron Range. Perpich wants to tap into a fund originally set aside for the next century, tap into it to the tune of $27 million. And the former governor says that Spanis has not committed himself sufficiently to the subject of economic relief for the Iron Range. Spanis, though, says Perpich is wrong, and on the 6 p.m. report, we'll hear from both men. Skip?
Thank you, Ellen. While these more than 2,300 delegates and alternates do prepare to listen to their endorsed U.S. Senate candidate, Mark Dayton, he's due to speak here in just about 45 minutes or so. Vice President Walter Mondale, former vice president, has arrived in Duluth. He talked with reporters about half an hour ago. We'll hear from Fritz Mondale and the Dayton acceptance speech as part of the 6 p.m. report. David?
Very good, Skip. Thank you. Mike Walsher is in the newsroom now with an update on the afternoon's national news. Mike?
Right, David. At the top tonight,
the official start of the convention, Skip Loescher has been there ever since, keeping track of things. Skip?
Have indeed, David, and we finally have some excitement here in Duluth. Much of the credit for that has to go to the backers of the U.S. Senate endorsed candidate, Mark Dayton. He's on the podium now, giving his acceptance speech. Seated next to him, Walter Mondale. A year ago, Mark Dayton probably would have put 99% of these delegates to sleep. He was a dull speaker. Tonight, he exudes the confidence and energy of a Hubert Humphrey-style speaker. Let's go to the podium for just a moment as Dayton accepts the nomination, which he won by an absolutely overwhelming margin.
We are the party of Wendell Anderson, Warren Spanis, Rudy Perpich, Joan Grow, Jim Lord, Jim Oberstar, Bruce Vento, Martin Sabo, Roger Moe, Harry Sieben, Nick Coleman, Bob Lewis, and other DFL legislators who established standards of excellence in education, in health care, in human services, and which stood as a model for the rest of the nation, and which many called the Minnesota Miracle, until the Republican administration turned it into the Minnesota Nightmare. And today, friends, we are the party of the future for Minnesota and for America. Today, we are prepared to take the tradition and the heritage of our past and turn them into strong, positive policies for the future. And for that, you deserve the credit.
Give you some idea of the margin of victory for Dayton. He picked up between 77 and 78% of the delegate support on this floor. In 1970, when Hubert Humphrey was opposed by Earl Craig, Humphrey polled 79%, just 1 percentage point more than Dayton got. But while unity was the rule of the Dayton endorsement, perhaps the most divisive wedge to hit this party began to take shape sometime this afternoon. It came with an appearance by former Governor Rudy Perpich in downtown Duluth. Now, Perpich is not running for endorsement at this convention, but he does plan to go head-to-head against this party's gubernatorial endorsee, Warren Spanis. Alan Cox has that story for us from the convention floor. Al?
Skip, Rudy Perpich says he has no intention to disrupt this convention or to try to take the endorsement for governor away from Warren Spanis. But that hasn't stopped Perpich from opening a hospitality suite in a hotel nearby, and it hasn't stopped Perpich from asking for an appearance before the DFL faithful. This afternoon, the former governor was telling the faithful and reporters about his major concern, economic relief for his native Iron Range. Perpich agrees with lawmakers from the area who want to tap a fund for economic development, $10 million for public service jobs. Perpich goes a step further. He wants $17 million more for immediate development of energy resources and tourism. Perpich wants to use the convention as a forum because, he says, his rival has been silent on the issue.
If we get the support from the DFL leadership and also from Mr. Spanis, of course, for a fund which we consider permanent, for diversification of industry in northern Minnesota, I won't appear. But if they don't give us that support, then I want to appear, and that's going to be a major issue.
But Spanis says he supports the same proposals for Iron Range relief that Perpich does. Spanis says he's shocked Perpich would question his commitment.
So I've always been for that. I continue to be for that. And I am not someone who's just been talking about it in the past couple of weeks. I've been talking about it for a long time.
Iron Range issues have always been close to Perpich's heart. His brother George and other Rangers helped guide his campaign. But in this year's election, Rudy Perpich is taking a worldview, as with a farm group this morning.
Embargoes don't work. And I was in Vienna at the time that the embargo was in 1979. And very briefly, let me tell you what happened shortly thereafter.
Perpich went on to explain that he believes the Carter grain embargo that was intended to hurt the Soviets actually helped the Soviets. Perpich would like to speak to this convention Sunday morning. He says that would be after the endorsement vote for governor, and therefore that he would not interfere with it. It might, though, come before the lieutenant governor's race, and that in itself is a possible bone of contention for the DFLers. Skip?
He will not, of course, attack Spanis when he takes this podium, will he, Al?
Could you say that again, please, Skip?
I said there is no indication that he plans to attack Spanis when he takes the podium on Sunday.
He says, Perpich says, that he will not make any sorts of attacks on his opponent, Spanis, that he merely wants to talk about economic relief for his home area.
Okay, thanks, Al. Another DFL perennial candidate made his way to Duluth this afternoon. In fact, he's sitting on the podium right now listening to Mark Dayton's speech. Former Vice President Walter Mondale flying into Duluth about 3 hours ago in preparation for tonight's convention dinner. But it wasn't just state politics that was on Mondale's mind today. In fact, earlier this week, former President Richard Nixon said that the Democrats would be better off running Ted Kennedy in 1984 because Kennedy has more charisma. Well, today, when Mondale arrived in Duluth, we asked him if he is as blah as Nixon says he is.
I ended up number 3 on Nixon's enemies list. And I think it's the proudest thing that ever happened to me. And on my tombstone, I'm going to say, here lies Walter Mondale, number 3 on Nixon's hit list. Because he's still after me, which is fine.
Mondale will address the DFL dinner tonight at the Radisson Hotel in Duluth. He'll speak to the convention tomorrow, as will former Governor Wendell Anderson. And speaking of Anderson, is he on the comeback trail? We'll tell you more about that later tonight. David?
Thank you, Skip. Two significant court rulings were handed down this afternoon in Minneapolis. One puts plans to close the DFL State Convention in Duluth is now nearly history. The DFL now has a U.S. Senate candidate, and tonight a former vice president is speaking to a convention dinner. We're going to go live now to the Duluth Arena, where the convention team is standing by for a report. Chief among them, Skip Loescher. Skip?
Thank you, David. Good evening to you. The convention floor, as you can well tell, is pretty quiet here tonight. That quiet, though, may be signaling the proverbial calm before the storm tomorrow when the DFL delegates indulge in the annual bloodletting. That's for the candidate for the Attorney General's endorsement. That's a very hotly contested contest. But while that arena lies quiet tonight, that is not the case just 3 blocks from here at the Radisson Hotel, where DFLers have been welcoming home one of their own. Chief among them, Walter Mondale. Alan Cox is standing by live at the Radisson. What's happening, Al?
Skip, it's just broken up. In the words of one of the dinner speakers, the DFL party leaders once again shamelessly oversold a hall for a fundraising banquet. It was an overflow crowd jammed in to hear brief speeches that were, by turns, lighthearted and determined. The big name, former Vice President Walter Mondale. He mingled with DFLers shortly after appearing on the convention platform tonight with endorsed Senate candidate Mark Dayton. Hard to argue with the fact that Mondale is the top name of the state party these days, but some DFLers believe Mondale hasn't paid as much attention as he might to his home base, what with his apparent run for the presidency for 1984. Still, in his talk tonight, Walter Mondale talked about his concern for the grassroots of the Minnesota DFL.
As we concentrate on what I am sure is going to be a fantastic victory at these top levels in 1982, let us also make certain that we don't fail to push hard for the state legislature.
The former vice president said that the time is ripe for a Democratic takeover, not just in Minnesota, but throughout the country because of what Mondale called disaffection with the policies of the Quay administration and the Reagan administration. Walter Mondale's formal speech to the main convention, of course, Skip, will be tomorrow morning.
Amen, and we will be there. Thank you, Al. Today, though, well, it had to be Mark Dayton Day in Duluth. 18 months of testing the waters, spending $2 million or so, most of it his own money, meeting as many Minnesotans as he could. It paid off today with the DFL endorsement for the U.S. Senate.
I am deeply honored to appear before you today to accept your endorsement as our party's candidate for the United States Senate.
Candidate Dayton proved to be Catalyst Dayton when his endorsement brought this convention to its feet, yelling in unity this afternoon. Dayton received 78% of the vote, far ahead of pro-life challenger Jim Cramer. But kinks in the DFL armor of unity began to show earlier in the day. Former Governor Rudy Perpich met with delegates out of the arena and took that opportunity to question Warren Spanis' support of state aid to the depressed Iron Range. Spanis shook off the Perpich comments, saying he, Spanis, does support the plan in its entirety. Both men will leave this convention as opponents in the September primary. And late today, Rudy Perpich was given the go-ahead to address this convention Sunday morning, just one day after Warren Spanis receives the nod as the party's gubernatorial candidate. Karen Boros on the convention floor with a look at what may lie ahead for Warren Spanis tomorrow. Karen?
Skip, despite his strong position in the DFL, Attorney General Warren Spanis is running into some vocal opposition here in Duluth, and he could be denied a first ballot victory. Party feminists aren't happy with Spanis' choice for Lieutenant Governor, Representative Carl Johnson, and will be voting no endorsement for at least the first ballot.
We've had people coming in talking to us, and the nominators for Warren are certainly not ones that would lead liberals to great confidence. There are many people who are, I'm afraid, are probably going to vote no endorsement on the first ballot for Spanis, and I hope that people don't confuse that with Perpich votes, because they really aren't Perpich votes. They're, tell Warren you were naughty, we will vote for you on the second ballot.
Feminists are not alone in withholding their support for Spanis on the first ballot. The Perpich supporters plan the same action, and the combined forces, which is not to be confused with the united forces, could deny Spanis that first ballot endorsement. On Sunday, feminists plan to vote for Arlene Latho for lieutenant governor. Today, it took the endorsement committee 5 ballots to agree on Carl Johnson, that's Spanis' choice for the office. I talked to Latho this evening, and she said she is very encouraged. Back to you, Skip.
She may be encouraged, Karen, but does she really stand any chance at all?
Well, when I talked to Arlene yesterday, she had expected that her support would be about 200 votes. This evening when I talked to her, she said that that has doubled since yesterday, that she has at least 400 votes.
Well, maybe that will be interesting. Thank you. There are also rumblings of a political comeback for Wendell Anderson. On our special report at 10:30 tonight, we'll have a report on the future of Wendy. David?
Mike?
All right. Elsewhere tonight on the national scene,
Good morning to you. I'm Skip Loescher, reporting live from the Duluth Arena, where this DFL convention is just about to endorse Warren Spanis as its gubernatorial candidate. In fact, the balloting for that endorsement started just about 10 minutes ago or so. And as expected, there has been some dissent to the Spanis endorsement, that primarily coming from the DFL Feminist Caucus, which opposes Spanis' choice of Representative Carl Johnson of St. Peter as his lieutenant governor's candidate. Let's get more on that protest now from the convention floor, and Alan Cox. Good morning, Alan.
Good morning, Skip. We've been hearing for the past few days rumors or reports that the DFL Feminist Caucus was going to recommend no endorsement on the vote that's going on right now here on the floor. With us is Mary Ellen Tisdale, who's a longtime worker in the DFL Feminist Caucus. Her title, co-coordinator for candidate selection. And Mary Ellen, what's the word? Are you voting no endorsement?
No, I am voting for Warren Spanis on the first ballot. It is not true that the DFL Feminist Caucus has provided any recommendation nor is providing any leadership to the feminists who are voting here today about Warren's candidacy. Individuals are concerned about his choice for lieutenant governor, and we have said vote your conscience on the gubernatorial position at this point to demonstrate to Warren however you feel. Now, a number of people are going to let Warren know how they feel in a different way, and I'm one of those people. I'm going to vote for Arlene Leto for lieutenant governor on the first ballot because I'm not completely happy with Warren's choice. However, I am very, very strong supporter of Warren, and there are many, many feminists out here who are.
How do you reconcile the two? How do you reconcile being a strong supporter of Spanis, but not supporting the person he wants for lieutenant governor?
Well, Warren has been a long-time supporter of individual and human rights. Particularly, he has been a pro-choice supporter, and his choice for lieutenant governor, though he said he did not know the position of his designee, that individual is a pro-life person.
Mary Ellen, in just 10 seconds, are we going to see any spillover of this conflict into the race for the Attorney General endorsement?
I certainly hope not. I hope people do not take their disconcertion with Warren and carry it over into the AG race, because I'm supporting Tom Byrd.
I see.
And I want him to be our Attorney General.
Mary Ellen Tisdale, thank you very much. Skip still standing by here on the floor for the ballots and the first voting on the gubernatorial endorsement to be taken up.
I would imagine that would be about 45 minutes away, Alan. Thank you very much. Preceding this morning's balloting for governor, these more than 2,300 delegates and alternates heard from a very familiar DFL voice, former Vice President Walter Mondale, who wasted absolutely no time in blasting the Republican administration in Washington.
And speaking on behalf of the steel workers of the Iron Range, Mr. President, your problem is not a lazy America. We want to work. We're not here for welfare. We're not here for a dole. We're here for jobs to help build this country. Be under no illusions about that at all.
And a bit earlier than that, former U.S. Senator and Governor Wendell Anderson delivered this year's DFL keynote convention address. He warned DFLers that primary battles will endanger the endorsement process and endanger the party.
Okay, the delegation chairs may then...
If we don't make our endorsement system work, we're going to be in great trouble. The primary day is the second most important political day of the year. Without a strong endorsement system, Hubert Humphrey would have never been a strong voice on the national scene.
The hottest contest of the day, the race for Attorney General. Attorney General candidate Tom Byrd starting his day at the Liberal Caucus, then going to an outdoor breakfast where about 200 supporters showed up. Byrd was also visited by former Vice President Walter Mondale, but Mondale said he's not taking sides in that AG's race, that he was also going to visit Skip Humphrey's breakfast this morning. Berg put his delegate count this morning at about 550. Now, if that figure holds up or is anywhere close to being true, that would ensure multiple ballots for the AG's race. Berg predicting that if Humphrey does not have a very strong showing in the first ballot, that he'd suffer some significant erosion a bit later on in the process. Skip Humphrey, his mother Muriel Humphrey Brown, hosting a breakfast of their own this morning. Humphrey supporters saying they expect at least 600 votes on the first ballot, roughly 50%. They need 60. But they expect that Berg will trail them by 100 votes. Both Berg and Humphrey people say the third candidate, Nancy Olcon, will only get about 100 votes. We'll be following that race, of course, for you all day today. That's the big one. And we'll be back in about 45 minutes from now. I'm Skip Loescher reporting live from the arena in Duluth. Well, good morning to you again. I'm Skip Loescher reporting live from the arena in Duluth, where this DFL convention has hit a bit of a lull. They are now tabulating the ballots on the gubernatorial endorsement. There's no question about that outcome. It, of course, will be Warren Spanis. We actually may have a final vote count in about 15 or 20 minutes is the best guess right now. But the stage is now being set for what is the biggest race of the day, the endorsement battle between Skip Humphrey and Tom Berg for the Attorney General's race. Alan Cox standing down on the convention floor now with Tom Berg. Alan?
Skip, something of a rare moment. This is the first time in the convention, one of the rare times that I've seen Tom Berg not shaking someone's hand at the moment. You've been, you and your operatives have been working the convention pretty hard. What do you think is going to be the outcome on that first ballot?
The first ballot is hard to call. I think that both Skip Humphrey and I will have probably somewhere between 500 and 600 votes. Just where it'll be, I don't know, and I don't know what Nancy Olcon will have, where that will break. The real questions are what will happen on subsequent ballots, I think.
You expect to grab most of the Olcon support?
We're certainly hopeful. We're trying to make everybody welcome, both Humphrey support and Olcon support on subsequent ballots.
Is there anything you've seen so far, as hard fought as this appears to be, that is going to keep the party from healing?
Oh, no, I don't think so. This has been a good race. It's been a real good DFL contest where we've all been out working and stressing our positive points, and there's been a very minimal amount of any kind of backbiting or that, and I think things will coalesce behind the victor very nicely.
And you expect to have Skip Humphrey support if you win the endorsement?
I would certainly hope so. He has indicated throughout the campaign that he would support the endorsed candidate, and so we're certainly hopeful that he will, and I would expect so.
Tom Berg, thank you for joining us. Skip?
Alan, does Berg actually have to get most of the feminist votes if he's going to win this thing?
Say that again, please, Skip.
Does Tom Berg have to get most of the feminist votes on subsequent ballots if he's going to win?
Tom, do you think you have to get most of the feminist vote on these ballots after the first to have a chance of winning the endorsement?
Oh, we're certainly looking forward to trying to get that vote as best we can on the first ballot as well as subsequent ballots. And we have some good indications of support that we will do that.
Okay, thanks very much. Alan Cox with Tom Berg. His opponent, Skip Humphrey, is on the convention floor now with Karen Boros. Let's go down. Karen?
Skip, as you said, with me is Skip Humphrey. And I guess the question to you, Skip, is how do you think you're going to do? What do you expect to see on that first ballot?
I think we will have a very good position, a strong position on the first ballot. With 3 people in the race, it's going to take a little bit of time to gain 60% of the vote. But I think in the early stages of balloting, we are going to be able to succeed to get that endorsement.
These morning hours have been crucial to the campaign. Do you feel like you have picked anything up this morning? Do you feel like you've just held what you had? What's your sense of the day?
Oh, no, I can tell you personally, I've gotten 10 more votes just talking with people. Both at our breakfast this morning with people coming through. I had 2 individuals tell me that if I would continue to work as hard as I've worked for this endorsement, that they're certainly for me, and they were uncommitted before. I think the other discussions that I've had with delegates here that were uncommitted or that were swaying one way or the other has also converted a few.
The feminists are talking about if Berg or Olcon has less than 10%, or about 120 votes, that the supporters for that candidate would go to the other candidate. How do you think that's going to affect you?
Well, I hope that the delegates will take a look not at any particular singular issue. What we need to understand is that we're doing the business of trying to develop a candidacy on a broad basis for the public, and that we need to represent all of those interests, including the feminist interests. And I would hope that people will take a look at the candidacies of who is electable, who has the best experience and understanding of the office, and is able to complement and help bring into office a government that can help people in their time of need.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. Back to you, Skip.
Thank you, Karen. It should be an interesting contest. There are those here who believe that a Humphrey name on the ticket would certainly help a victory chances in November. Others believe that Tom Berg would probably be the better administrator in the Attorney General's race. Philosophically, they are somewhat different, as we have heard before, and we'll find out what happens sometime later this afternoon. We'll be back at the Duluth Arena exactly 1 hour from now. Good afternoon to you. I'm Skip Loescher reporting live once again from the arena in Duluth, where just 35 minutes ago the delegates to this DFL State Convention made the inevitable a reality by endorsing overwhelmingly Warren Spanis as their governor's candidate.
No endorsement, 170.4. Gardner, 43.49. Spanis, 988.72. Warren Spanis is the endorsed candidate for governor.
By an 81% margin, Warren Spanis endorsed the gubernatorial candidate. That's more than Mark Dayton received last night. Interestingly enough, though, 170 delegates, 14% of this convention, probably feminists, most of them, voting for no endorsement. Joan Grove picked up 4 votes. Rudy Perpich, who isn't even asking for endorsement here, received 8. Right now, what is going on this convention floor? The nominating speeches for the most hotly contested contest, the Attorney General's race. Former U.S. Attorney Tom Berg was the first of the candidates to address this convention.
You can put together a ticket that can not only win big, you can put together a ticket that can govern well. And if you do that, you will have earned the respect and confidence not only from the voters this fall, but from the next generation.
That is Tom Berg. In fact, the man that he is running against, Skip Humphrey, is making his way to the podium right now to address this convention. But before we go up there, let's go down to Alan Cox on the convention floor. He's been following the Berg race. Alan?
Skip, right after Tom Berg made his speech, he made one last sweep through the perimeter of the hallway to shake a few more hands and then went into a room off the convention floor here at the Duluth Arena. He and his aides poring over computer lists of all 1,220 delegates plus the alternates here at the Democratic Convention, trying to figure out who's aligned with whom. They still say they feel they have about 550 delegates on the first ballot and roughly the same number for Humphrey. They believe they will pick up, the Berg people believe they will pick up on successive ballots. They're especially looking after the third ballot, where under the convention rules, any candidate with less than 10% of the vote has to drop out. They think Olcon will drop out, they'll get the feminist support and carry it over in a multi-ballot race, Skip.
Okay, and it won't be too much longer before we'll find out. Right now, let's go up to the podium where Skip Humphrey is addressing this convention.
Finance Committee that oversees and sets the budget of the Attorney General's office. I've learned firsthand and close up that the Attorney General has the almost limitless capacity to serve the public good. I've learned and felt something else. I've learned that the Attorney General of Minnesota must be more than just a lawyer. Legal ability is very important, to be sure. If I didn't think after 12 years of active legal practice as a partner in a good law firm, after a full experience in the many branches of the law, if I didn't think that I could perform the lawyer's duties, I would not be seeking your endorsement. And may I say that my competitors for this endorsement are both well-qualified attorneys too. But that's only part of what's called for. That's just the precondition. Because the Attorney General must be more than just a lawyer. The Attorney General must be the principal force on the people's side against all those large interests that would deny our fundamental basic
There is some electricity in the air here. Skip Humphrey addresses this convention. There was when Tom Berg was at the podium. If Karen Boros can hear me, she's down on the convention floor. She's been following the Humphrey campaign. How does it look, Karen?
Well, Skip, at this point, the Humphrey people are saying that they will have 600-plus votes on that first ballot. They are also saying it will be crucial for them to be substantially ahead of Tom Berg, that if they are even close to Tom Berg, that it will turn into a real dogfight. They think they are 100 to 125 ballots ahead on that first ballot. They need 733 for endorsement, so if they've got 600, they're 133 shy. It might be that Tom Berg or Nancy Olcon's people don't have enough votes. They've got an agreement that if either one of those candidates has less than 10% of the vote, which is about 120 votes, that candidate will drop and the votes will go where they're supposed to, where they want to go, and there's speculation that those votes will go mostly to Berg. Back to you, Skip.
Thank you, Karen. And the way it looks, it will be more than one ballot, more than two ballots, possibly three, maybe even more than that. It is clearly the most exciting race of this DFL State Convention. We'll be back here in 45 to 50 minutes or so, live from the arena in Duluth, to update you on what's happening in this 1982 DFL State Convention. Good afternoon to you from Duluth once again. It now feels like a DFL State Convention. For the last half hour, these people have been battling over how the voting for Attorney General will be tallied, how the ballots will be tallied and then reported. They have been doing it by tallying the secret ballots by tellers and then simply reporting the results. There was a move to move that to a roll call, with each county unit tallying its own ballots and then reporting the results. It now looks like that's the way it's going to be, but they're still arguing about it here. Earlier, we heard from Skip Humphrey and Tom Berg, the main two contenders in this race. The last candidate, Hennepin County Commissioner Nancy Olcon, spoke just a few minutes ago.
I am a candidate for another reason. I am a victim of cancer, now in remission, and I am tired of being told that I have to give up on the same dreams that other people still pursue. I don't believe that anyone has to give up on their dreams.
And when we know the results of the Attorney General's race, we'll let you know right away. Skip Loescher in Duluth.
What was billed as a show of unity has turned into a drawn-out battle in Duluth.
Delegates to the DFL Convention have spent much of this day struggling with the choices for the Attorney General's race. Skip Loescher and our convention team have been following the debate all day. Skip is joining us now live with an update from Duluth. Skip?
Thank you, Michael. In the hottest contest of this DFL convention, the Attorney General's endorsement, the results of ballot number 2 are now in. And while Skip Humphrey is in the lead, Tom Berg has somewhat closed the gap. Just before the first ballot was taken, this convention voted to have the ballots tallied by county officials and then reported in a roll call fashion. It was argued that that would speed up the process. In fact, it did just the opposite. It took more than twice as long to tally the votes as it had when the tellers did it for Attorney General and the U.S. Senate. And when they were tallied correctly, Skip Humphrey had garnered nearly 51% compared to Tom Berg's 36% and Nancy Olcon's 12%. No one had been endorsed. Moments after the votes were cast in that first ballot, Nancy Olcon stepped up to the podium and withdrew from the Attorney General's contest.
I'd like to address you for just a moment and announce that it is my decision, after the results of the first ballot, that I will withdraw my name from nomination. And I can only say that my personal recommendation for those of you who are my supporters and who would want that recommendation, that I would urge that you would vote for Tom Berg. Thank you.
The convention reverted to its original system for counting ballots on the 2nd. Here are those results now in. Humphrey, 643, that's 52%. Tom Berg at 575, 48%. A 22-vote gain for Humphrey and a 128-vote gain for Tom Berg, most of them Nancy Olcon's old followers. Karen Boyles has been following the Humphrey camp. She's on the convention floor now. Karen?
Yes, Skip, interestingly enough, on that second ballot, Humphrey carried 6 of 8 congressional districts with Berg, the solid leader in the Twin Cities, carrying districts 4 and 5. In the last minute, I'd like to report that the Humphrey supporters have started a little rally here on the floor. While the ballots are on the floor, the Berg supporters are sitting around looking somewhat chagrined at this point. Back to that second ballot, outstate in counties with colleges, the two tended to run neck and neck. After the last ballot, Humphrey said he was pleased to gain 22 votes, said he was not surprised at all to see Berg gain 127 votes, that it had been expected from the start that Berg would pick up the bulk of the Ocon supporters. We had invited Humphrey to be our guest this evening. Humphrey has apparently chosen that he would rather work the delegates, so I think we'll go back to you now, Skip.
Okay, Karen, has he given any indication at all how long he thinks it might take to win?
I think you just asked me how much longer the vote would take. I can barely hear because there's so much noise down here.
That's all right, Karen. Alan Cox is following Tom Berg today. Let's go down to the convention floor. Alan, you have Tom with you.
That's right, Skip. Tom, your showing on the first ballot was a bit below the projections you discussed for that. Are you discouraged at this point?
No, because the second ballot was better than we thought. We picked up a full 12%, and Skip picked up only, I think it was less than 1% of the vote. So the movement on the second ballot was definitely in our favor, and I think they're about taking the ballot on the third ballot right now.
Still 14% though behind what you need for endorsement. Is that surmountable?
That is, oh, I think so, yes. Skip is 9% back, and we're 14% back. So, yes, it's within 5 percentage points right now.
You're still working the floor hard here.
Yes,
any one area you're concentrating on?
No, we're just trying to hit it throughout the state, just talking with people and trying to get support.
All right, Skip.
Tom, can you hold Tom Berg there for a minute, Al? Tom, if these votes pretty much galvanize at this point, how many more ballots will you go before you'd be willing to concede, or would you ever concede?
Skip,
would you? I think he's asking, would one or the other of you concede at one point?
Oh, I don't expect that that's going to happen for a while. I think it's going to be here for a while, Skip, just before any of that comes about.
Most of the night, how's what you're predicting?
Most of the night?
That I don't know, Skip. I think the next ballot will tell us quite a bit.
Okay, thank you, Ellen and Tom Berg. One other thing we are awaiting right now is the appearance of Warren Spanis on the podium to deliver his acceptance speech. That's scheduled to begin about 25 minutes from now at 6:30. The Spanis endorsement, of course, a mere formality.
But I place a nomination for your endorsement for governor, our friend Warren Spanis.
The result of this morning's gubernatorial balloting was a foregone conclusion, although feminists, upset with Spanis' selection of Carol Johnson as his running mate, simply refused to vote for anyone.
No endorsement, 170.4. Spanis, 988.72. Warren Spanis is the endorsed candidate for governor.
The 81% margin for Spanis was impressive. It was 3% greater than this convention gave to the U.S. Senate candidate Mark Dayton yesterday. Well, ballot number 3 in the Attorney General's race is on now. We'll be here throughout the night. Mike will update you on the results on the 10 p.m. report.
All right, thank you very much, Skip, and the whole crew up there in Duluth. Well, some important votes were also being cast here in the Twin Cities today. Striking Northwest Airline machinists voted on whether to accept the company's latest contract offer. And we'll have that story coming up next.
Plywood, Minnesota.
DFL party has ended within the hour at the party's statewide convention in Duluth. For details, we switch live now to Skip Loescher. Skip?
Debbie, Skip Humphrey is the DFL endorsee for Attorney General, but that endorsement was far from easy. More than 8 hours of balloting ended just moments ago with fanfare. The son of the DFL legend Hubert Humphrey must now take his party's backing and pit it against the Republicans in this fall's Attorney General's race. Skip Humphrey's victory tonight followed 5 long and agonizing ballots by more than 1,200 delegates. And with his victory came the end of this convention's most decisive race. Karen Boyles has spent the last 15 hours traveling with the Humphrey campaign. She's on the convention floor now with Skip Humphrey and his wife Lee. Karen?
This is, yes, Skip, we're here on the convention floor. In the past, DFLers have had some fights that they haven't been able to heal in time for the November election. What do you anticipate this time around, Skip?
I think the process that we've had here is a consensus process, a good, tough, honorable debate And then we've reached a resolution, and this is the way I think we should be working. Our political process should be able to have those disputes out in the open and yet reach a consensus, and I'm very proud of our party as how it's worked in this particular matter.
Do you think that the party will be healed and that you will go into battle against the Republicans?
Yes, I have received the congratulations of those who were in competition with me and their supporters, and we are working together.
Let me ask Lee one quick question. Lee, you were talking a little bit a moment ago about what the family goes through toward this night like this. Do you think it's been worth it? Do you think it's been worth it?
Oh, yes. It's very definitely been worth it.
What are some of the things that you've endured?
Well, the separation, of course, would be the first one. A lot of meetings and functions of the children's that Skip couldn't go to, and that I'd have to go to alone, and just a lot of upheaval in our family.
Well, we make sure they come together with us, and we've been working. I'll tell you, I've been at the plays and I've been at the concerts too.
Yes.
We're making it.
You made rehearsals
all the way till November.
Well, a public service takes a lot of effort, and I think our family is well prepared to serve in it.
Okay, thank you very much. Back to you, Skip.
Thank you, Karen. It wasn't the secret balloting that put Skip Humphrey into the Attorney General's endorsement. It was actually the concession of challenger Tom Berg. Alan Cox has that story from the convention floor. Al?
Skip, his supporters agree that Tom Berg fought the good fight. He worked the crowd here in the arena through the afternoon and into the evening. But after the fourth ballot, the Berg camp decided the situation was virtually hopeless. And just before the results of the fifth ballot were announced, within the hour, Tom Berg asked to speak to his people from the platform.
I thank them all very much, and I thank each and every one of you delegates that has voted and hung in there with me over ballot after ballot after ballot. However, the convention, I think, has made it clear that they want to see Skip Humphrey on the ballot as Attorney General, and I would urge all of you to join with me and support Skip Humphrey and make him the next Attorney General of the state of Minnesota.
Tom Berg had won the majority of the support from Hennepin County Commissioner Nancy Alcon, much of that DFL feminist support, but from the first ballot on, his support was in the minority. He told us shortly after he made those remarks from the platform a few minutes ago that he's not quite sure what went wrong for him, but he conceded that the factor of the famous name Humphrey, the magic name for so many DFLers, was probably a very crucial factor in Tom Berg's defeat.
Skip. Thank you, Alan. And you have to think Skip Humphrey came into his own today. 12 years ago, Warren Spanis entered this hall, this very same hall in Duluth, Minnesota, to receive his party's endorsement for her Attorney General. Spanis won that fall. And tonight, Warren Spanis returned to this hall in Duluth, and he won big. His DFL party rewarded him for more than a decade of service in the Attorney General's race. The reward came in the form of the gubernatorial endorsement. The 51-year-old St. Paul native accepted the party's nod with pride, then rolled up his sleeves and blasted the Republicans' handling of state finances in Minnesota.
All this must stop. We've had enough. We can't stand it anymore, and you and I will put an end to it.
Amid praise from both friends and delegates, Spanis promised a fresh start for Minnesota. By the way, those upset by his not selecting a woman as his lieutenant governor candidate were told that he would appoint many women to key positions in his administration, so says Warren Spanis. And while the attention at this convention now turns to some of the minor constitutional races, analysis of the classic Humphrey-Berg battle is already underway. We'll have an in-depth, behind-the-scenes look when we return at 10:30 tonight. Debbie?
Skip, thank you. We'll be looking forward to that report. Today's Northwest strike vote was said to be a test of strength for that union. We will have that story when the 10 p.m. report continues.